Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carrot Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2015 war thriller drama titled Man Down. Now, Man Down runs for 1 hour and 32 minutes long. It is directed by Dito Montiel. It is produced by Steve McIvety, Don Krantz, and John Burton. The script was written by Adam G. Simon, and the story was written by Adam G. Simon and Dido Montiel. The score was composed by Clint Mansell, the cinematography by Shelley Johnson, and it was edited by Jake Pujinski and Mark Yoshikawa. And the stars of the movie are Shia LaBeouf, Courtnry, Gary Oldman, Kate Mara, Clifton Collins Jr., and Charlie Shotwell. Let's just face it, shall we? Being in a war is hardly a vacation, which is the biggest understatement I have ever said in my entire life. I mean, with enemies lurking within the near distance, to the idea that your life is hanging within the balance, and the fact that little to no rewards come out of the sacrifices you make to serve your country, it's a hell you have entered, and that few ever come out, even after the war. And that's what we get for our leading protagonist in this movie. The dedicated men and women who have been through hell and back sadly never fully come back, as the nightmares they've encountered have become a reality, and the fears and delusions that manifest within their heads can never be fully forgotten. Man Down demonstrates how long after the war and the battles they fought can never be expunged from their minds, as told from the lead character named Gabriel Drummer, played by Shia LaBeouf, who after fighting in the war in Afghanistan comes home and is awaited with another nightmare as he tries to look for his wife and son who had been allegedly kidnapped. Obviously, when you come into the war, you are expecting nightmares. You are expecting to see violence, chaos, malice, people pillaging into towns. Innocent lives have been lost. Civilians, non civilians, you know, just the whole idea of witnessing and experiencing the blood, the torture, the constant reminder that your life is in danger. You could come home as a hero or come home in a box. Just that whole ideology is there. But, and just like I said, when you enter a war, very few people ever really fully come out. And the wars that they have when they enter still seem to somewhat linger and manifest in their brains once they leave. It's very this movie is very extremely unsettling, like I probably would have expected. But the movie, although showcases just what it's like to have post traumatic stress disorder or PTSD, I just kind of wish that this movie would have been more better explained instead of, shaky cam syndrome, which seems to be very commonplace in this movie, and the way how they segue from one scene to another in just rapid speed. Come on, whoever's directing this, slow the fuck down. Let us, ingest some of this horrific stuff, this horrific nightmare um, that seems to be affecting our leading character. but we never really get to see it because it just goes from one scene to another, and it's also very non-linear, and it just causes more mass confusion than explaining everything which could have been fully better fleshed out. Now, mind you, the intentions that Man Down has to offer is that we watch a young soldier make the transformation from a determined and dedicated recruit ready to take down the enemy to becoming an unfortunate shell of his former self, battling the effects of PTSD, almost like the ghosts of war followed him home. This is kind of like the explanation why you may enter a war zone, but the chances are you never come out, even if it's not necessarily in the physical sense. Sure, when you come home, you're expecting to come home to freedom. You're expecting to come home with a happy reunion with your loved ones and your friends and your family. But in the end, some people just come into the war and they come back from the war with the war still lingering on in their memories and in their brains. And it does not always ever go away. It just lingers and stays with you for a long time, even sometimes to the point of eternity, which is sad. Under the direction of Dito Montiel, he covers the movie in a non-parallel format as we see traces of Gabriel's downward spiral from his boot camp session where he gets verbally scolded by a tyrannical gunnery sergeant, his private life before getting drafted, facing up with his deeply concerned but strong-willed wife Natalie, played by Kate Mara, and his adorable mop-topped son Jonathan, played by Charlie Shotwell. To the time he was deployed to Afghanistan, to his traumatized scarring that has affected his psyche as he insanely goes on a mission to rescue his wife and his son, who might end up potentially becoming a victim of child slavery back home in America. Now, although it's confirmed that his wife and his child are not kidnapped, but in his own mind, in his own manifestations, that he is still struggling to let go, he is still, under this traumatization, and it's just so hard to watch because we do like the character and we want him to pull through, but in the end, he just can't let go. And no matter how much therapy sessions he receives, to how much medication it could be to help overcome this burden, sometimes these things just don't go away right away, to the point where sometimes it just doesn't even go away at all. So while there is no denying that Montiel's intentions are really good, and also succeeds in making the movie at least very interesting. But like I said, the biggest problem about Man Down is that it's way too in your face in its delivery, and the narrative is handled very awkwardly. This direction shows that Montiel knows very little about the effects of PTSD, and that the story is based on general assumptions that might be either borderline offensive and insulting to those who have suffered from PTSD or someone who they know suffered from PTSD. It doesn't help that the supporting characters offer little to help in caring for Gabriel's illness, assuming that it's just a temporary phase and that he'll pull through, though not as easy as one thinks. But see, that's the problem. I guess to actually know someone with PTSD, you have to experience time being with them. And maybe it would have been better if there was a director who actually knew somebody who had it, or even if the director is not really uniformly a director but an actual therapist, maybe they could get a better understanding or a better interpretation of someone who does suffer the ill effects of PTSD. I mean, we're not saying that the intentions are bad. We do appreciate Montiel's Montiel's likeness and caring for the characters, but the fact of the matter is he just does not fully understand what it's like to have it, because maybe he probably has never met somebody who had it, and he's just making generalizations about what it's like to have a traumatic illness like PTSD. It's not just some person who just came out of the war who still thinks he or she is at war. Well, in this case, it's a he, and who thinks that, it's just a phase. He'll pull through. He'll pull through. Once he settles down, he will forget all about the war. But the problem is that people who go into the war never forget the war, or sometimes they're still led with the assumption that the war is still lingering on in them. And it doesn't really mean that therapy or medicine is going to cure their traumatic experiences. It's probably going to linger in their minds and their thoughts for a very, very long time, to sometimes even the point to never again. It doesn't mean that they're all delusional or have some kind of psychological disorder. No, nothing like that at all. It just means that they just can't seem to let go because of the horrible experiences, the heartbreak, and the sadness that comes with it. I guess you would have to actually be in the war to actually fully understand what it's like to have PTSD. PTSD. But he's never been in the war. It's like he's baking a cake and the only thing he's doing is just adding the icing. He doesn't know the full ingredients or the full effects of having it. To understand the full effects of having it, you kind of have to bake the whole cake. Not just, lubricate the cake with the icing, or just give us the icing of what PTSD is. You probably either have to be a person who has it themselves, or somebody who has it, a loved one, a family member, a friend. Don't just make general assumptions of what it's like to have it, like it's just a phase. Because it's not as easy as one could think. Understanding it is not that easy. And I'm not blaming him or anything like that. I'm not saying this person is ignorant. I guess it just takes somebody to know to understand it better. You know. Meanwhile, performance-wise, Shia LaBeouf does everything possible, and I had no problems with the performances. Shia LaBeouf does everything possible, and he was just perfectly cast in roles that he has played in the past. He seems to capture the essence of a flawed, introverted individual who might be prone to crack when you least expect him to. We could see him at times. He gets to break out of his shelled exterior through his sessions with his therapist, Captain Peyton, played by Gary Oldman, and the melancholic drama that has led a few minutes of comfort. But the sad part about Man Down was that the director strips its good intentions with a myriad of cliches, mixed low budget sets, and absurd dialogue that rests on cringe. It's like he just tries to dumb us down. And it's very unsettling to watch the slow motion scenes of soldiers training nonstop until sunset while soft rock is playing in the background. Or that way how Montiel pans towards a dead Afghani family, which then segues to Gabriel smiling as he's finally made it home. I actually hate it when a movie tries to insult our intelligence by covering a scene and then coming and repeating the scenes moments later. Because I think that that kind of aspect is so fucking lazy that I don't need to see a scene, go back on it, and then just redo it again. Like as if we have like the mindset or the IQs of goldfish. I mean, come on, the movie's 90 minutes long. We don't all have short attention spans. There's another weakness. Most people, of course, with the complaints like, oh, this movie's too long. Well, I have a complaint. This movie's too short. It should have been expanded more to almost like a 2 hour or 2 hour, 15-minute long movie. That way we can have a little more backstory, a little more character development, and none of this eat, sleep, breathe, repeat type of scenario that we get. We don't need to see scenes repeated over and over again. It's bad enough this movie's only 92 minutes long. Let's make something out of it. Let's expand more of the narrative. Let's go witness some more better character development, which is something that's really lackluster in this movie. I mean, the only person who really just truly dominates is Shia LaBeouf. The other supporting characters don't do really very much to go with the narrative. I mean, I'm sorry. As much as I appreciate Gary Oldman, he's a legend. He's a veteran performer, but he's really not doing very much in this movie. Kate Mara tries her best to be the strong, loving, supporting mother, but even her role doesn't really amount to very much. I mean, the only one who really captures our emotions is Shia LaBeouf. He's the only one who really truly stands out. The visual aspects of this movie are actually quite uninspiring too, and lacks in terms of originality. The coloring is bland, the digital compositing is pedestrian, and the shaky cam is so fucking annoying! The military scenarios, on the other hand, were pretty exciting to watch. Back when Black Hawk Down was made about 2 decades ago, now these days it has become monotonous and done to death. The whole military training scenes, they still want to try to copy Full Metal Jacket, but they just fucking can't do it. And then you'll also get, all this other repetitive stuff. I mean, it just seems anticlimactic. It just seems monotonous. It's like if you've seen one, you've seen the other. And it lacks effect. It lacks storytelling. And while, Shia LaBeouf's character Gabriel could probably almost be something like what would have happened if Gomer Pyle didn't shoot himself and came back home from the war. He probably would have been in a similar state that Gabriel was in. But we never really get to fully go through that because a lot of the weaknesses come from the visual aspects because everything is so choppy, everything is so awkward. I mean, this had potential for some good storytelling. I mean, there's a lot of brilliant ideas out there. And I'm not saying that the effort was bad, but it's just that the way how it was delivered just did not mesh. So, in spite of the plethora of flaws depicted in this movie, I have to say that Man Down is truly a film I really wanted to hate. And there's a lot that I hated about this movie. But for some strange reason, some bottom crevice to my heart, I really can't fully hate this movie. As much as I want to hate it, there's a part of me, and a big chunk of me actually, that doesn't hate the movie. Sure, the technical failures might be overwhelmingly atrocious, and the narrative is non-linear, and the shaky camera annoys the fuck out of me. And the fact that the movie is told in a non-linear, awkward disposition, there is still a part of this movie that I will give full credence to. The film does succeed in keeping things, you know, somewhat interesting. Not entertaining, but interesting. As Shia LaBeouf, whether you like the guy or whether you hate the guy, he definitely puts a great effort to capture the spirit of a traumatized soldier who can't escape the clutches of the nightmares he's conflicted in Afghanistan and Iraq. He pretty much stays in character the whole time. We understand him fully, and I think this movie seems to depend way too much on his acting, that nobody else really seems to matter too much, albeit the fact that that seems to be the only thing that director Dito Montiel actually gets right. Because everything else is just one big muddled mess. And it just really, really does not. I mean, this doesn't really work for me. Would I recommend this movie? Not really, because you're just gonna get confused because it's so convoluted, it's so confusing, it's so non-linear, and the shaky cam is enough to give you a seizure. Maybe not figuratively, but maybe not literally, but figuratively. Maybe even literally. You know, if you have epilepsy and you can't stand certain types of flashes and quick pacing and with the camera work, maybe this isn't for you. Maybe this isn't for everyone. Well, I know for sure this is not a movie for everyone, and it's not really that pleasant to watch. But I will say this movie does keep you interested, even if it's just to watch Shia LaBeouf go from, a dedicated, eager to anticipate soldier to a person who has just got lost in the war and has never really fully escaped. So, when all said and done, if I was to give this movie a scale out of 10, I'm sorry to say this, but I have to give the movie Man Down a 5. I can't really recommend this movie too much. So, I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my YouTube channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead, but just remember the 3 simple rules. Be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments, and I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Carrutherider saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.